Welcome to the Ben Buzz. I'm Benny King, and this is Hawkeye State of Mind. Now, the Hawkeyes have a huge game tonight against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Now, I'm going to be doing my preview prediction here as Iowa really got a much-needed win last week against UMass, and so far this season, it's been a little bit of a tough go. They blew out Albany 34-7, a very impressive showing, and I know they're an FCS school, but, a win is a win at this level. And then on the road at Iowa State, that was the really tricky one. Iowa State's now number 12 in the country, and we were on the road. So we did play them fairly close and only lost 13-16. That one was unfortunate, and it still stings, especially losing the Cy-Hawk Trophy, but at least it was against a very worthy opponent on the road. And then this past weekend, we went back home and got UMass 47-7. It was huge. It was a great offensive showing. Gronowski threw 2 touchdowns. He threw for almost 200 yards. We ran for a lot of yards. I mean, we ran for 201, passed for 234. It was a great day for the Hawkeyes. And then, of course, Kirk Ferentz is now the winningest Big Ten head coach in history with that win last night in front of his home crowd at Niall Kinnick. So now going into this one, Iowa's traveling on the road at Rutgers. Now, while Iowa is favored, this one is pretty tricky. Rutgers hasn't lost a game yet, and this is opening up of the Big Ten schedule. This is our very first in-conference game. I know a lot of people might think, haven't they already started with Iowa State? Well, actually, if you didn't know, Iowa State's in the Big 12, not the Big 10. You could easily mistake, why wouldn't they be in the same conference because they're so close? Well, regionally speaking, it makes sense, but no. Instead, Oregon and Washington, which are on the other side of the country, they're in the Big 10. Conferences don't make too much sense now, but that's just the reality of it. But this is the first conference game, and this is huge because our conference schedule is really difficult. And this is, even though it's one of the more winnable, we're on the road against a team that hasn't lost, it could be very tricky. Now, what has Rutgers done? So, as we said, they're 3-0, and they've had impressive showings and also unimpressive. So last week they played Norfolk State, won 60-10, very impressive, dominant win. Obviously, they weren't supposed to lose. That's not a quality opponent, but, still an impressive showing. Then they also had a home game against Miami, Ohio, and won 45-17, and then they barely edged out Ohio 34-31 in week 1. So that was very interesting, but you can see throughout they're kind of growing week to week, and I know maybe you say the quality opponent is going down each week, but they do seem like they're getting better and better. And they definitely use those weeks to really figure out the offense and just all facets of their team, where you look at their QB, Athan Kaliakmanis. He was 18 for 26, 309 yards and a touchdown last week. He threw for 300 yards. That's a bad man. We'll see how he does against better competition against Iowa's defense, but he certainly did pretty solid last week for Rutgers, and they had 563 yards last week and 185 rushing the ball. So this game is really going to come down to a few things, right? Rutgers' offense has looked pretty solid, where you look at even when they barely edged out Ohio in week 1, they put up 34 points. Then they put up 45. Then they put up 60. But here's their biggest challenge by far, which is an Iowa defense that is incredible, coached by Kirk Ferentz and Bob Parker, and with key players like Xavier Nwangpa. So this is really their big test. And it's really going to be interesting how they come into this, but they should be very lucky. They should feel very lucky that this is at home for them. That's huge. Now, even though their offenses played great, their QB just threw, for 300 yards. But this is an Iowa defense that isn't certainly going to give up those types of numbers. Even Rocco Beck was putting up great numbers going into that Iowa game, and then he was barely able to get 100 and a touchdown. So it really resembles a good QB if you're able to do fairly decent against an Iowa defense that is really, really talented and really well coached. You see how they develop guys on that defensive side of the ball. And I know we sound like a broken record on this show talking about the NFL players that come out of Iowa, but there are so many great defensive players, and Iowa's just so great at molding those guys. So it's really huge for Iowa to have that type of defense, especially in this type of game that could get choppy, especially with Iowa's offense. We'll see how they fare, but here's the thing. Ohio's not that great, right? We know this. And Rutgers almost lost to them, gave up 31 points to them. So you think, okay, maybe Iowa's offense has pretty decent chance if they were doing that to lower opponents, right? And Iowa had a huge game against UMass, and I know it's the same thing where it's like, oh, well, UMass isn't that great of a team. That's not very impressive of an offensive showing. Well, we hardly had 40 passing yards against Albany. So, and this is a better opponent than them, but we really just needed to figure things out, needed to figure out how to pass the ball, and we did. And Gronowski, he completed 16 passes, just about 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, and now here's the test. So we had a huge preparation game. We really used it well. Patterson, Weegan looks great, and then Williams still looks solid, Xavier Williams. And then the big story last week was Nathan McNeil, where he really took off and had 56 yards and was the leading rusher. So that was huge for Iowa. But obviously, the quality of opponent goes up, and now they're on the road. Rutgers, this could be tricky, and especially it's a Big Ten game. It's not one of the more bigger rivalry ones like Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Nebraska, but this one is very important. And especially as we kick off this Big Ten schedule, this game is so huge, and especially off that Iowa State loss, I had predicted that we had enough discipline to really put away UMass and really figure things out, because our Hawkeyes are usually extremely disciplined, and that's what they're built on. And they really showed that against UMass when they put up 47 points. They didn't have to put up that much, but they continue to do it as a response to what just happened. Now, this one, there maybe are more winnable games on the schedule, or maybe lesser teams, not very many, but this one is huge because we're opening Big Ten play, and we don't want to start 2-2. And having both losses against the only good teams we played is not great. Or, just the only Power 4 teams we play. If that's those games, then it's like those wins against UMass and then an FCS school don't really hold up. Now, why is this so important? Not just that it kicks off Big Ten play, but our schedule gets so much tougher. Listen to this 6-game stretch, all right? Number 19, Indiana, on the road at Wisconsin, number 2, Penn State, Minnesota, huge rivalry there, number 6, Oregon, and on the road at number 25, USC. That's ridiculous. We didn't even get to the fact that we're on the road at Nebraska. This is rough. And especially when we have a game like this that's winnable, that I know we're favored. We're not going to be favored against Penn State, against Indiana, against Oregon, against USC. So, this is huge. And not to say that we won't win those other games, but the fact that we have such a great chance in this one, we can't throw away these opportunities like we kind of did against Iowa State, because that was very winnable. So, even though this isn't as huge as those ranked matchups or those big rivalries, the fact that this one's winnable, it is so important to win this one so we continue to build off of this. And then you look, the next week, we play number 19 Indiana at home. You know how much confidence those guys are going to have that was regained after dominating UMass, and then if we beat this Rutgers team going into that game? I'm not saying we win, because number 19 Indiana, that's still a great team, and we'll see how Indiana fares this week against Illinois. We'll see who ends up coming out on top in that one. That one is huge. We don't end up playing Illinois this year, unfortunately, but we do play Indiana, number 19, so that'll be a big test for them. And especially, here's what I'm worried about too, is that going into that Indiana game, is that if Illinois ends up winning and then Indiana has to respond, and then they have that desire to just blow out a team and really come in with a bunch of confidence and fire and take it out on us. That's what I'm worried about. But this team has a lot of discipline, and this Rutgers team seems to as well, because they've been in a tough game with Ohio, found a way to win. It's huge. I know Ohio's not great, but it's huge for teams to find a way to win. And then Miami, Ohio, they won more handedly, and then Norfolk State, they won even more handedly. Now, I know the quality of opponent is going down and down, but the stats are going up and up, obviously, but we really got to see how it fares against Iowa, because they really haven't played anyone. Iowa had a big test in Iowa State. Iowa has played somebody. Rutgers hasn't. As much as you want to say Ohio and Miami, Ohio are playing somebody, it doesn't compare to Iowa State, the number 12 team in the nation. And Iowa almost beat them. And if you watch the game, maybe they probably should have, because the game was tied at 13. If you watched, you know what I'm talking about. But a guy had tipped the ball, ended up tipping right into the Iowa State tight end's hands, and ended up getting them the first down. And then they go down and score a field goal, and that wins the game 16-13. Iowa was very close. And I know we can make we can kind of tear that down and be like, well, they had a muff punt. Well, there were some penalties that got them a touchdown. But they very nearly had that game. It really was just in their hands, just barely. But yeah, this Iowa team is tested. They're proven. And against not great opponents, but against lesser opponents, they put them away. And I know I've had a lot of gripes with the Albany performance, but felt a lot better about that performance against UMass. And going into this one, it really is tough. Because in terms of Big Ten schedules, this is brutal. Like, it really is. I mean, we still have several rivalry games on the schedule, and that's not even including the 4 ranked games. It was 3 ranked games before, and of course USC is now a ranked game. We'll see how that holds up once we get to November, but that'll be really interesting. But it's like we host Oregon, we host Penn State, we host Indiana. That's the bright side of those ranked games. At least we host them. Where it's like if we were going on the road, then it's like, yikes. But, maybe we have a solid shot at home at Niall Kinnick, but we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I mean, hosting Minnesota is going to be great for us. Hosting Michigan State could probably be great for us. And then this one right here, on the road at Rutgers. But, like, this team has so much discipline. They have so much fire. They got so much confidence back from that Iowa State loss with UMass. And then that was really huge because they were playing for Kirk. Like, that was for Kirk Ferentz, and that was great. And going into this one, I mean, it really is tough, and it's not easy to win on the road in the Big Ten. And we got a lot of chances to do it. And this might be the most winnable because we're at Wisconsin and we're at Nebraska, but those are huge rivalries. Where it's like if we can get this one, and Rutgers, like I know they're undefeated and they're 3-0, but they do look suspect. And they've looked a lot worse than us against worse opponents. And yeah, that's really the takeaway, is that they haven't really played anybody, and they've still looked bad against teams like Ohio. So I really do think Iowa has a great chance. But the big thing is Mark Gronowski. Last week, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Was that a fluke? He hasn't played that great against anybody until then. Or you look at that Albany game. Not great. 8 for 15, 44 yards, and he did have a touchdown, but that was bad. And then against Iowa State, he had a pick and only 83 yards and only completed 13 passes. And then when you look at the fact that he only completed 16 against UMass but had 179 yards, you can really see that against Iowa State it was mostly checkdowns. And I worry that we're going to go back to that and not really be able to throw the ball, so then Rutgers can bring the defense down low and end up stopping the run as well and our short passes. That's kind of what Iowa State was really great at. Now, obviously, Iowa State's a much better team, so I don't know how well Rutgers is going to be able to execute that, and I don't know if they're really going to be able to shut us down like that because they're not Iowa State. They're not at that level. So that's the big thing. And I know we can run the ball, but we saw against Iowa State when we were unable to throw, we really struggled on the ground. Like Xavier Williams, who was huge in week 1, only had 26 yards. That's the thing. And Patterson had 60. Patterson was huge in that, but it was really tricky. And it took a while to get Patterson going. It really took a while to open up the run, and that really hurt us because we started late. And with Iowa, where it's the leads usually feel a lot bigger than they are, where it's it feels like we're out of the game for so long, and then when we start getting back in, it just ends up feeling like it's too late. But that really is the huge thing. It's I trust our defense. I really do. And I know they gave up a touchdown to Iowa State, but we gave them a short field with a pick. That was Iowa State's when they got their touchdown. And then one of their field goals was because we had a bad penalty on the first kick, so they got a few first downs, but we stopped them. Where it's I really trust this defense, and they fared pretty well against a great Iowa State team, and I think they're going to be really, really good against a not-so-good average Rutgers team. So, yeah, I mean, it really is tricky. And just on the road, that's what I'm worried about. Because it's Rutgers isn't that great. Oh, they haven't played that great, but it's well, are we really that great? I don't know. I would like to think so. That would be the hope. It would be really bad if we weren't that great, because we would definitely get exposed here. Because Iowa State, they're oh, yeah, we play Iowa State close. We always do. So it's that doesn't really matter whether you win or lose, because that game is always going to be relatively close. But it's if we play bad against Rutgers, if we do the same thing we did against Iowa State against Rutgers, that is a huge problem. Because Iowa State is incredible. And now they're number 12 in the league. They're 4-0. Iowa State's a great team. The only 4-0 team ranked in the top 25. Just because they played in week 0, but still. A lot of those teams in the top 25 maybe won't get to 4-0. They're already there. So that's a great team. And I wasn't that appreciative and happy of it in the moment just because, we lost. It's tough to be real happy about that. Losing sucks, right? But the things that we built off of, how well we played on the defensive side of the ball, and I know our offense struggled, but eventually we did open the run-up, and Gronowski kind of figured it out late, and he really figured it out against UMass, where it's like, if we're able to run it against Rutgers, which I think we are because there's a big guy, Dominique Orange is not on Rutgers. Dominique Orange is a menace for Iowa State. He really gave us tough times that week. So honestly, I think Iowa has a really solid shot here, and I think we do have to win this one because as we said, on this, our schedule gets really brutal. It really does. So we really need to win this, not just because we'll drop that one or that one, so we really need to get wins while we can. That's still very huge, but it's we need to have the sort of confidence going into those games that we need, and the way we do that is by winning games, and this one especially with how winnable this one is. So we'll see how it goes on the road at Wisconsin, on the road at Nebraska, when we host 3 ranked teams, when we go on the road against a ranked team. We'll see how those go, but this one, it is very winnable. And I know it's not at Niall Kinnick, but Rutgers has looked very suspect, and I know Iowa's favored by 1 or so. But if you think about home field advantage, that's about 3. So on a neutral site, we'd be favored about 4.5-ish. But yeah, I mean, it really does suck because I think if this one was at Niall Kinnick, I think we definitely win. Now, maybe it's good that we have those reserved for better teams, as we've kind of reiterate that it's good we have those for better teams, where it's if we can take care of business on the road and then give ourselves the best chance against those ranked matchups, then that's huge. And so it'll be huge to have that at Niall Kinnick. Because going on, if we had to go to Penn State, I remember a few years ago we went to Penn State during the whiteout. It was bad. We ended up losing by 20-ish, and I know we were only down by 10 at halftime, but it was bad. Not 20-ish. No, we were down by at least 30. Yeah, my apologies. It was worse than what I said. Going on the road at Penn State's no joke. And Oregon, I know they're not that ranked that high until they beat a top team. But I think Oregon's a top 3 team in the country. Not necessarily I don't think they should be ranked there, but I do think in terms of talent level, I think they are there. So Oregon is really scary. Illinois has gotten better. Indiana's gotten better over the weeks, and then if Indiana beats Illinois, then that's a really good team, and that'll probably suck next week. But yeah, that one's a lot more winnable. So it's man, especially we don't have to go to Penn State in a whiteout. That's huge. Can you imagine? And even just at Penn State, that's a really tough place to play. We get them at home. That's huge. Now, in terms of our ranked matchups, we do have to go to the Coliseum of South California, so that could be tricky, obviously. But honestly, I don't know because I think their ranking's kind of suspect. I know they slipped in there at number 25, but they kind of look decently rough against Purdue. I know they won by a lot, but it's Purdue, And I'm not entirely bought in on USC, and I know they're just on the outskirts now at number 25, but I'm not that crazy on them. So I could definitely see us stealing that one. I could definitely see us beating Michigan State. So, this one is really huge because there's a lot, I think with, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan State, USC, I think we win all of those, right? Then it's all about, Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, but it's not just about that. It's not just about, I think we'll beat this team, and then we'll get those ranked matchups. But it really is about taking care of business. We can't lose 2 games in the first 4 weeks. That's what's really important about this. And this is a huge road test, and I think it's going to be a great get-back win, especially since we're not playing a ranked team, no less than number 12 team in the country. So, it really is taking care of business. We need to be in a place to beat those ranked teams, but also we need to win the games that we have the best chances in. We need to take care of business. That's what it is. We can't slip up. And we really can't slip up against a Rutgers team that we should be better than. I mean, I know their offense played great, but that was against Norfolk State. That's not crazy, eyeballing. No one's raving about that. And even though that is cool and that's a big statement win, that's not crazy where it's their offense isn't going to do that against the Hawkeyes. They're just not. This Hawkeye defense is too good. They're too talented. They're too well coached. So it comes down to this. Will Iowa be able to throw the ball? That's what it is. Because I think Iowa can run the ball. I think Rutgers, their offense is going to be really neutralized by Iowa's defense. But if Iowa can't move the ball, then we might see Iowa State all over again. That's what I'm worried about. But this is a very winnable game, and they're not Iowa State. And we had a great get-back win and a great, prove-it win, where it's like we really got to do something and we really got to work on things. We really did against UMass. So this Rutgers game is so huge. And I know if you look on the schedule, you might think it's not that huge, but it really is. We already lost before week 4. We cannot lose again. That's why this is so huge, because if we drop to Indiana, if we drop to Penn State, if we drop to Oregon, and then you start talking about USC, and then all those rivalries, we can't lose winnable games this early, and that's why it's so important. And I think Iowa has the ability, the talent, the defense, and hopefully the passing attack to beat Rutgers on the road. This is the Ben Buzz starring Benny King. Thanks for tuning in, and this is Hawkeye State of Mind.